Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I'll be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken. For that matter, for them to share their experiences with my current students and anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. Let's welcome my guest today, Tyler Tubridy. Hey, Tyler, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm so glad that we were able to connect because Tyler is a very busy man, whether he's doing HoopDiamonds or he's apparently the best man in a wedding. He's going away every single weekend, it seems. It's very hard to nail him down to get him to do this, and I finally have. So I'm very thankful that I've been able to get you. So thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have you.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad we were able to make it work.
Me too. So I'd like you to take a few minutes to briefly introduce yourself. Please include when you left the Don, where you went to high school, college, and post-college of what you are currently doing now.
Yeah. So again, my name is Tyler Tubridy. I attended Don Estridge from 2006 to 2008, where afterwards I then went to St. Andrews for 3 years and then transferred to Boca High my senior year. Graduated from there with a bunch of other Don Estridge alums, actually, and then found myself going to Valencia College up in Orlando. At that time, had ambitions to do the 2 years there, transfer over to UCF, but kind of realized up there that I might be moving in a different direction. So I actually transferred back down to Boca and went to FAU, where I think I did 2 weeks and then ended up dropping out to pursue what I'm doing now currently full time, which is my company HoopDiamonds, which, like I said, I started back in 2013 and then officially incorporated back in 2019. So 4 years now as a company, but 10 years in total working on it.
That's awesome. And as I told you in our pre-interview, I had kids last year who were asking me to interview. I've been trying to nail him down for a year because my students know HoopDiamonds, because if you follow on Instagram, you see him taking these amazing pictures and videos of basketball games, because Tyler, from my recollection, was a really good middle school basketball player. But then after that, things changed a little. Would you like to go into that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would like to think that I was a pretty solid eighth grader, and, 6th to 8th grade basketball player. And was very fortunate to play alongside and play under some great players and coaches. And we were actually able to bring the first county championship to Don Estridge my 8th grade year. But like you said, you get to high school and, kids and your peers start to progress, and you start becoming aware of what it might take to get to the highest levels, and that naivete of making all the way to the NBA or professional starts to kind of wear. And then you just kind of got to get creative if you know that you want to be around the game or whatever it is that you're passionate about. And the road as a player comes to an end. You just got to get creative and figure out, how to make it happen.
And that's what I love, because I tell that story in class all the time and people look like I have 12 heads on my shoulders. They're like, what do you know, old man? You never played professional anything. And I'm like, I know that, but I know people who've done this path and road before. Now, obviously, prior to talking to you, the people are my peers, so they're even older and they're like, whatever, we don't care about these people. And then I remembered, I'm like, Tyler has this HoopDiamonds thing. Maybe he'd be happy to talk about it, because the basketball realization came to an end that you weren't going to make it to the pros. But basketball itself never died, because you knew this is what you wanted to do. You just had to carve out that niche. So how were you able to do that? How were you able to say, okay, this is coming to a close, but this door, I'm kicking this wide open?
Yeah. Honestly, it's just the very beginning is kind of hard. It just, you got to take that pill of reality and just realize, sometimes things don't work out the way you foresaw them as a kid. But after that, like I said, you just kind of got to get creative and see where your passions and skill set lie. And in sports, you know, there's, especially in 2023, there's so many different ways you can take it, whether it's administratively and you want to work your way up through the business of sports, or if you want to be a coach, you'd obviously want to go, you know, become an assistant somewhere, or you know, volunteer and then work your way up. But for me, it was realizing that I had so many other different, you know, creative passions that I was able to hone over those years. And what it ultimately boiled down to was I was a huge fan of other brands that do things that, or do very similar things that I do, such as Ball is Life and Hoop Mixtape. Those were probably the biggest versions of what I am today back in 2006 in middle school. So I was constantly on the computer watching different mixtapes and seeing guys around the country. And that was also kind of my exposure to what is out there, and realizing like, okay, well, I'm not doing any of what I'm watching here on this video. So
Let me figure this out.
Exactly. So I'm like, well, okay, well, maybe I can be on the other side of it. And, you know, being creative, growing up and always being interested in music and making music and videos and pictures and things like that, I was like, all right, well, let me take this model and this approach that these guys over in California and elsewhere have done, and try to, you know, bring it down to the place that I grew up in, a place that I to this day think is such a hotbed for athletes. And Florida is obviously very well known to be a football state, and it still is and will always be. But I think
basketball's pretty popular. It's a close second now.
Yeah, it really has. And I think I would like to think I've played a part in amplifying that, because back then you couldn't go to a game and see a camera or see anybody trying to put on.
You're basically making a platform for these people. So not only are you helping yourself, but you're helping other people get to be seen. Because I think I was thinking about this while you were just describing what you were saying. Do you also feel, Tyler, that perhaps your place in time was also set up for the fact that the internet and Instagram and Snapchat and all these platforms are starting to evolve as you are becoming an adult? So It was kind of like a smooth transition for you?
It was. I mean, I say this all the time to my mom. You know, the year that I chose to drop out and pursue this in 2013, like, Instagram didn't even have video yet.
No, it's just pictures, right?
It was straight pictures. It was.
I forgot about that.
It really was like you hear people talk about, you know, luck, and everything takes a little bit of luck and timing. And I would like to think, you know, part of it was me recognizing that, but also just I didn't choose when to be born. It just happened to be the time that aligned with it. So, you know, getting her on board to be like, hey, this is a kind of an opportunity and a time frame that might not be here forever. Like there will be saturation later on down the road. And she recognized that, or maybe didn't recognize it, but at least trusted me and allowed me the freedom to go out and build that platform, like you said. And, you know, I guess to put a bow on it, you know, doing what I do is definitely rewarding in the sense that I'm around the game that I love, but I also love the aspect of being able to help someone, you know, get to that next level, or provide them a platform that maybe wasn't going to be there had I not been there filming and whatnot. So there's definitely a lot of cool aspects of what I do that all, you know, satiate the need of having a purpose and finding a different route that didn't necessarily require college.
That's awesome. And I love the fact that timing, you know, right place, right time, but you have to recognize it. You have to know it and feel it. And it's kind of like the Facebook movie where the Winklevoss twins go to complain that Zuckerberg stole the idea, and he's saying the chancellor, the head of the college, is saying, you know, people come to Harvard to make a job. You know, they make their own job, and they're like, yeah, but you can't make another one of these. This is its only thing. You know, which would you like to go back to? Oh man, what's the one when you were a little kid that they had before Facebook?
Oh, MySpace.
MySpace. Would you like to buy MySpace now? Exactly. Thank you. I had a total brain fart there.
Yeah, no problem.
And so, you know, it's that's it. And you recognized it, but you felt it and you did it, and it's moving along. And then I was just telling my students this recently, that it's better to be your own boss than to work for somebody else, because you're going to reap all the benefits of having that job versus you're not going to become rich. It was actually Tony Robbins who said that in a book my wife is reading. And he was saying, you're not going to become rich by working for somebody else. You'll make a decent living and make money, but you're not going to become that self-sufficient person. But when you own your own business, and that's a great thing to convey to these kids, that when you're your business owner, it gives you all these other opportunities. Yeah, it gives you the negatives as well, because when things don't work out, you're the one in charge and you got to eat it. But when it goes positive, it's all on you. That's incredible. So take us back to the infancy of Hoop Diamonds. How did this matriculate in your mind? Like, where did it come from?
Like I said, it was really just trying to recreate something that I had loved as a consumer, as a viewer. And obviously throughout the last 10 years that I've been doing it, I like to put my own spin on things. I took a different approach from the branding. So obviously with diamonds being in the name, it was kind of finding that diamond in the rough, or the diamonds in the rough, and giving guys who I felt deserved a platform that maybe didn't. And I think that really conveyed really well and was a true embodiment of the brand was when I was able to link up with Colin Sexton, who is now currently with the Jazz. He got drafted by the Cavs.
Nice.
But at the time, he was an unranked
Unknown
guard from Georgia. Granted, he was playing on one of the largest stages at the EYBL, but no one really had put him on any type of ranking. No one was really giving him any video coverage. And I came across him one day. I'm like, I see it. He just has that it factor.
Right.
And so I guess the matriculation, to answer your question and stay a little bit more on task here, is just realizing that I had to go about, even though it was an idea that's already been out there, just like anything, like no one's going to reinvent the wheel. But if you're able to put your own spin on it and put your own touch to it, you can kind of make it yours. And I feel like that's something that I've been able to do over these years.
I was racking my brain to try to figure out what Hoop Diamonds meant. And I'm glad that you explained it so I didn't have to guess and be wrong. And as soon as you said it, I was like, diamond in the rough. Duh, I get it now. I was like, yeah, that's it. So basically, you found an avenue or a niche that no one was covering, that people weren't finding like you said, the unknowns, the D-leaguers, the guys that, who is the guy you would know? Jeremy Lin, he played for the Knicks. He went to Harvard. Like, you don't go to Harvard to play basketball and become a professional basketball. I think he was the only one ever in Harvard's history. So, anyone can be found anywhere. But it's weird, though, because to me, that's more of a football scenario. Would you agree? Or is that basketball as well? It seems more like to me that that's football, where they're like, oh, we found this guy in Iowa. No one's ever heard of him before.
I'd say at the grassroots level, it's definitely probably even across the board, because it's just 50 states. It's such a wide talent pool that in my specific demo that I started with, I've obviously branched on to cover multiple levels of it. But back in the very beginning, I'd say pretty similar. But I can see where you're saying maybe at like the draft level, where you got 7 rounds of 32 picks, like. Right. There's a lot more opportunity to find that diamond in the rough through the draft, where it's like, oh, you want to take a chance on some Illinois State guy in the 7th round and he pans out to be some all-world talent. I think that's definitely more prevalent in football. Whereas in basketball, you got the 2 rounds, 30 picks. At that point, people have been vetted. Everyone knows everything.
Everyone, right.
All the execs know more about the kids than they know about themselves with all the research and due diligence.
Right.
So
exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So I get, because this is just an area that I don't know at all, because my basketball knowledge has waned. I mean, when I lived in Miami, we used to have season tickets and I would go all the time. And now I'm just kind of like, meh, basketball, because I'm a huge hockey fan, and it's the same time, and it's the same season, and it's the same amount of games. And just between you, me, and the listeners, if I take on one more sport, my wife will divorce me. So
you got to pick and choose.
You really do. You like all the sports. You're definitely not a married man, because no wife is going to put up with that. It's unless of course it's your job. That's another story. If you're like an agent or something like that, I get it. But that's bringing home like the ultimate bacon. But for the rest of us, just watching, an 82 game season is a little rough. Oh
yeah, absolutely.
So then what do you feel in your educational world prepared you to do this? Like, what do you feel that maybe there was a teacher, a class, or just something you picked up at some point, whether it be middle school, high school, college, maybe if it's even just real life, or a parent explained it to you, that really helped you to prepare you for this job? Or was it just on the job training, learn as you go? Or what's that old saying? You're flying the plane as you're building it?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of things. I will say St. Andrews, which was definitely a huge adjustment going from Don Estridge to St. Andrews. And that's not a knock at all on, the level of difficulty and the way Don Estridge handles their stuff over there. But I just happened to go to a lot of the regular classes. I was not in gifted. I wasn't really being
Pushed.
pushed and challenged in the same way. But you go over to St. Andrews, and it's not unique to them. It's, really any private school. But they definitely forced me to take, I think, a college level approach at high school, which is why sometimes I joke around about, like, I dropped out of college, but I think it's because I already got 4 years at St. Andrews or 3 years at St. Andrews. And it just, it challenged me to approach learning and education a little differently and more independently. That's not to say that I didn't struggle. I definitely struggled. And in fact, my grades reflected that. But if I took anything away from it, it changed my, I'd say, outlook and my approach to things. And then by the time I was, out of school, even in college, thankfully, we live in a time period where the internet is a wonderful tool. Obviously,
Yes.
you need to vet the sources, and you need to make sure you're not just reading anything. But there are so many great tools out there that if you just have a curious mind, if you can channel that and really hone that in on something, you can really learn and pick up things a lot quicker than I think any other time period before.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I bring it up to my students all the time. I'm like, okay, to irritate them, I say, can you do me a favor and take out your telephone? I want you to go and look up your screen time. And they all roll their eyes because they know what's about to happen. And like, you tell me you don't have time. Well, how much time did you spend on Snapchat? How much time did you spend on Instagram, on YouTube, on whatever else it is that you're doing? If you could take an hour or 2 hours a day, imagine what you could make with the internet. Maybe you could make a career. And I've had kids who were in 8th grade and they were into makeup, girls. And all of a sudden, now they're getting free cosmetics from like all these different cosmetics companies because they've been doing this forever. I had another girl way back when she was like really big into pageants. And now all of a sudden she's, she then took that and is teaching other girls how to go into pageantry, because obviously you get to a point where you can't do that anymore. But then these loves of whatever it is turns into a career. I had an opportunity with photography after college, back in the print days of photography, not digital photography. And that was something that I liked, but I just saw that it was super saturated with all these other people. And what was my niche, and what was I going to do that would be any different, and how was I going to make it? And I was kind of like, well, this is more of a hobby. And then for me, when Instagram finally came around, I'm like, that's perfect for me. Get out a really good picture, say a couple of words, funny, poignant, whatever, and move on. And this is perfect. So finding that is so important. It's just putting in the time. And again, you were smart enough to realize, okay, this didn't work out for me, but I'm not going to begrudgingly hate basketball now because it wasn't for me. How can I find a different avenue, a different approach to still be connected, still be on the court, still be connected to these people? And like you said, ultimately even helping someone along their journey and their way. So that's got to be a very satisfying feeling for you.
No, it definitely is. And I kind of alluded to it earlier, but like, coming to that realization definitely sucks. There was a year up in Valencia when I went up to, do my 2 years there at the time. In my head, I would say I fell out of love with the game, and I just needed that year apart, because it's like you kind of get hit with that final, nail in the coffin of like, all right, I'm not playing college basketball. But it was definitely, while a tough year, it was very necessary, and it was a healthy way, I think, to just kind of come back to it and realize, like, okay, a year of I barely watched. I forget, that was probably 2000. Graduated in 2012. It was the 2012, 2013 season. I barely watched any games. I wasn't really following anything.
Oh my God.
After being
from the guy that loves basketball more than anybody I know. Basketball hiatus.
From 9-10 years old. And I was just like sick of it, because you watch it and you realize, like, you constantly get reminded, like, you didn't live up to and achieve the thing that you wanted to do so much. But whatever, whatever the cliche or corny saying is, like, if whatever you love, you let go, it'll find its way back, whatever that is.
Right.
That honestly manifested in that next year where I came back to it, and I was like, no, like I really do love this game, and I will find a way to create a career around it. And that's when that passion and that burning desire in my stomach was to, like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I got to hit the ground running. And that's exactly what I did.
That's awesome. You hit on another properism where I say all the time, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. You really sit there and get all, introspective, and you think about it, and you're angry and you don't want this to happen again. And, when everything's going smooth, you're not like thinking about anything. You're just like, oh, this is great. This is going to continue forever. But then you hit that roadblock and you're like, oh, crap, this isn't working out the way I wanted to all of a sudden. If you could just do me a favor and go back for a minute, how come you wound up going to the select high school that you went to? Why did you wind up putting yourself in a private school situation?
So that 8th grade year, obviously we had a lot of success at Don Estridge. At the time, honestly, I can't remember if he's coaching. I think he might still be coaching, but there's a coach over at St. Andrews, John O'Connell, who is a very heralded coach. He's done a lot for the game, and he's originally from New Jersey, and he found a home at
my home state.
Yep. And he found a home at St. Andrews, and he was, always was said to be a very good coach. And he came and watched us a few times, and he was very interested in having Louis and myself and Dante all go over there. Dante obviously ended up going to Spanish River. I initially was going to be just going right to Boca High because that was my home school. Obviously I was born and raised in a middle class family, and St. Andrews is a pretty expensive private school, so it was never really on the radar. But we were kind of recruited, so to speak. Not necessarily. I know I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but we were asked to look into it, and we both ended up going over there, doing a tour.
That's what happens. You were on a very, very good team. You guys went undefeated. You won the county championship. It happens all the time. I remember when I think it was St. Andrews as well. They wanted to improve their softball team, and they recruited like 4 or 5 of the girls. The same thing. They come and they're like, hey, you want to come and play and whatever. That's just how it works. They come out and find talent, but it just shows that you were talented enough to get a scholarship to a very prestigious private school that's expensive, and they wanted you there for your basketball skills, and yet you still never made it to the level of, I guess, what you probably thought from 8th grade moving forward. But it, again, didn't deter you. It's not like, I hate you, basketball. Look at what you did to me. I never made it to blah, blah, blah. You're like, all right, well, I got a good education from that. And then I was able to move forward and realized, okay, where are we going to go next? So that's the point that I was trying to come across, that you were good enough to get that free education from a very expensive school that the regular public usually can't go to unless they do get an academic or an athletic scholarship. So you were good enough for them to say, hey, this kid can come play for us. And you going, I could never go there as a paying patron. So why not? It's a well-known good place. So that was a positive. So if you could give the kids like a little, you talked about it a little bit, and especially jumping to St. Andrews, which is a private school, but how did you feel like you were prepared? Did you feel like it was a huge step up going from this magnet school to this private school? Like you alluded to it, you talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's like a twofold thing. I think academically, if I back in middle school maybe took things a little more seriously, I know for a fact Don Estridge put the tools in front of me to go to St. Andrews and succeed, because I know there are other cases of that happening. I just unfortunately was more of a procrastinator. I didn't really stay on top of my schoolwork. But by going there again, I was able to learn on the fly how things were done over there, and it definitely rubbed off on me. One of the things I will say that prepared me by being at Don Estridge and going over there, albeit very different in the two environments, but I love what Don Estridge provided as far as like diversity. And that was something that to this day, I talk about with a bunch of my friends who I still have from Don Estridge, because they ended up going to Boca High. We graduated together. We all stayed close. That Don Estridge really prepared me to be able to be around, all walks of life and just not even think twice about it. I mean, so did basketball as well. Like obviously playing on travel teams at 9, 10 years old, like you're exposed to so many different, race, religions, cultures, and it's
Everything.
just everything. And Don Estridge was a great melting pot for all of that because
It's
of the
funny that
magnet aspect.
it's funny that
So,
you bring that up because that's my school experience growing up in New Jersey.
mhm.
And I kind of have to remind these kids of that, because they're
Yeah.
kids and they don't quite know you as an adult and how you think. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I grew up. I grew up 10 minutes from New York City. So I
Mhm.
pretty much knew every ethnicity, every race, every religion as a kid growing up. And I'm like, this is normal to me. So when
Yeah.
I went to Don Estridge, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm home. This is normal
Mhm.
to me. So for me, it was an easy fit. And that's a great
Absolutely.
thing because we encounter everyone in life and we have to learn how to deal with people. And I think that people appreciate it when you know a little bit about their culture or their religion or
Mhm.
whatever it is that's their background. And you can just throw it out there and be like, yeah, I had a friend like that when I was in middle school. And now all of a sudden, oh, hey, okay. Because if,
Mhm.
if you like their culture, if you like their food, they like you. And that's just the way it works. And the more well-rounded you are, the
Mhm.
easier it is for you to make friends. I'm glad to hear that that rubbed off on you and that you were able to take that moving forward. That's awesome. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, I've mentioned it multiple times in the 15 years since, so it's definitely something that stuck with me. And while St. Andrews wasn't as diverse, it did have some level of diversity with having a boarding program, so they had international students that were from all over, whether it be the Virgin Islands and the islands around Florida or Germany, uh, you know,
Oh, so you're
parts of
expanding your
Asia.
horizon even more.
And exactly, so that's the funny thing is like at Don Estridge, it was like here's a melting pot of America, and like you said, what you will experience everywhere you go in America. Obviously, not every pocket of the
Right, right.
country, but that was like the real world experience. And then St. Andrews was almost like this. All right, here's like a glimpse of what the international world's like,
The
and I've
world, not just your America world, the
it,
whole world.
exactly. And
Wow.
then the same way I took experiences from Don Estridge, I took a lot of experiences from that as well. Obviously, by still being here in Florida in America, I really haven't gotten to experience more of the world and their cultures, but it's definitely something that interests me, and it's
Yeah, you
something that
have to.
I do want to
Traveling
do.
the world is like one of my favorite things to do. I love to go to
Mm,
different countries, eat different food, meet different people, fumble
yep.
through their language. Luckily, I have a linguist. My wife speaks a zillion languages, so we're
Okay.
safe in all countries. She's
There
so
you go.
brilliant. She makes me feel like an idiot when it comes to languages. It's just like we went to Italy before pandemic, and within like 3 days, she was speaking like fluent Italian, and I'm just like, talk to the
Wow.
lady, yo no say, like I don't understand. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
That
anyone who can and pick up languages is an extremely awesome feat. And growing up, I was never able to do it, even when I had it, bashed over my head through classes. So
oh yeah.
that's something that I've never been able to be good at, but I do. Like you said, I think it's very important to get out and see a bunch of different cultures. So whether I can speak it or not, I'll fumble through it, like you said.
That's awesome. So, if you could turn back time and tell your eighth grade self some advice, what do you think you'd tell eighth grade Tyler?
I would probably tell him just to, take a deep breath and just slow down. Um, it's even today I find myself struggling at times of just being able to take a few steps back and just appreciate kind of where I am and what I've been able to do and what I've built. But even back then, like I remember vividly when I got to St. Andrews, so fresh off of eighth grade year. So this ties to what I would tell that eighth grade self is I talked to a junior, a rising junior about to be a senior, and he's like, I was already talking about like, oh, I can't wait till junior year, senior year, whatever. And he's like, don't say that. Just like live in the moment because you're gonna blink and you're gonna be
It's over.
graduating. And then I think about that thought and I'm like, yeah, I blinked, I graduated again hypothetically, and I graduated again hypothetically.
Right.
So I'm now 15 years removed from that moment, and I just really do wish that I could have, like I said, taken a deeper breath, taken a step back, and just appreciated things as they were happening. And I'm trying to be more conscious about that. So I'm going to give that same advice to my eighth grade self, to my 29-year-old self, and just continue to take things in and just not rush the process.
That's an awesome way. It's an awesome way to be that you're taking it You know, you got to take it in as it comes because it goes by real quick, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like Ferris Bueller, you know, it's over before you know it. You
Yep.
really have to be on top of things because you have to enjoy the moment when the moment's happening because the moment can be over, like you said, in a blink of an eye.
Yep.
So I usually ask challenging educational experience, but since yours is in a different way, let's just drop the education and say, what was your most challenging experience with perhaps starting Hoop Diamonds or in the throngs of Hoop Diamonds while things are going along?
I would probably say just, you know, the day-to-day minutia of it can kind of get taxing, and especially when you have the pressures, or I guess the outside pressures that both exist and don't exist at the same time, of like being a dropout and not going to school, and you just kind of have these societal pressure thoughts that kind of creep into your mind, and just dealing with that, and realizing that you know, we all do have our own paths, and kind of putting that at the forefront. But I think, yeah, I'd say navigating the work-life balance, which is very difficult when you're building something from scratch. But the challenge of just, you know, realizing and telling yourself that, like, you don't have to fit this mold of what it is to be a successful person, or you got to graduate school and all of that. So just, yeah, I guess just making sure you don't get lost in the day-to-day minutia, and taking, you know, advantage of the relationships and the support that you have around you, uh, before you find yourself getting burnt out. And burnout was and still is sometimes the biggest challenge when it comes to building a business.
That's a tough one. That really is a tough one. But I just was listening to someone the other day, and just like you had mentioned earlier on,
Mm-hmm.
that you were on the precipice of the internet and being able to do this. I think that the college education, especially now when one of my former students who goes to Michigan was telling me that, hold on to your hat,
Mm-hmm.
$7,000 to go to Michigan out of state. You
Wow.
know, that's $280,000 for 4 years. You know, that's like
Mm-hmm.
unimaginable amount of debt to put on a 20-something.
Absolutely.
And they're starting to realize that it's maybe, depending on the field, of course, it's not like saying, okay, you can be a doctor and you don't need to go to medical school. That's never going to happen.
100%.
But doing what you do in these fields, it doesn't seem like it's going to be, or it isn't as widely popular of you need to have this degree anymore. I
Yeah.
think you're entering this time phase that was never in my lifetime. That,
Mm-hmm.
that you're also lucky. You're on the latter end of it, but it's still there. You've had your business for quite a few years, but
Mm-hmm.
they're also realizing, hey, it doesn't matter if you have the college education. If you know what you're doing, you know what you're doing, and that's more important.
Yep. Absolutely. And what's funny is, so my mom she's now retired, but she was an HR director for two pretty large companies throughout her career. And towards the end there, you know, we talk and discuss things, and one of her big things is recruiting. And she would always come across this crux of like, well, these people have a lot of education, but they don't have experience. And then I'm just like, well, how does someone with education get experience without getting the job? And it's like this chicken before the egg thing, where it's like you said,
Right.
you can get that degree, and by all accounts, it's an impressive feat. But now that degree might get you in the door, but if you're not doing something on the side, or, you know, figuring out a way to prove and have like a proof of concept or whatever it is that your role and skill set needs to be, it's not as valuable. And so I like in my situation to just go into 10 years of experience school or
Yeah.
experience university.
Right.
And I can then, you know, say one day I do want to, you know, get out of owning my own business, and I do want to work for a company, or a bigger organization that's more than what I have going on right now. I think I have a great proof of concept to point to as being as being good at what I do. And I think I've built up a lot of or a very good portfolio in those 10 years. And
Or even better, man. Somebody comes in like a startup and says, I want to buy Hoop Diamonds and we want you to continue to run it. We're going to pay
Yep.
blah, blah, blah. You'll be like, yes, please. You
Yeah,
know, and
exactly.
you have all the money. I have all the ideas. Does this get any better? You know,
Yep.
And you hit on yet another properism where I tell the kids all the time. When I was about to graduate college, my best friend and I were going to go out on tour with the Grateful Dead. We were huge Deadheads, and
Okay.
we were gonna buy a Volkswagen bus, and we were gonna fix it up, and we were gonna go on a year-long tour, and it got ruined because Pete got a new job. And
Oh no.
the only reason he got the job is 100 of what you just said. He got experience installing phone lines at Rutgers University while he was getting his engineering degree, his computer engineering degree, and he had experience and nobody else did. And you said it, and I say it all the time. If they're offering an internship, take it. If they're
Mhm.
offering any kind of job on campus that does anything about your career,
Yep.
take it, because if you don't have that experience, it's impossible to get the job. But it's
Yeah.
just like, I have all the experience in the world, but I don't have the degree. So I can get the job, but then I'm stuck at the glass ceiling and I can't move any higher. So it's like,
Yeah.
I think we kind of work backwards in this country. And,
Mhm.
we really need to give people with the experience chance. And is the degree that much more worth it when we have people who know what they're doing? And I just think that divide is now narrowing, and I don't think it's as
Yeah.
wide as it used to be. And people are looking for talent. It doesn't matter if it's degreed or not. And if
Yeah.
you're good at what you do, well, darn it, you're good at what you do. Maybe we should give them a chance. And that's a great point. I really appreciate that.
Exactly. And to you know go back to something that you had said about specific fields, like my feeling on college and everything is what it is, but I definitely agree where it's like, if you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, or something that is like you cannot do without going to school, then by all means, like that is 100% the route to take, because those are just fields you don't just pop in and have experience. Those are things you
Lawyer
have to go.
today, doctor today. No, it's not happening. Of course.
Yeah.
I think, though, I want to ask you a question.
Hmm.
How did your mom feel when you went, okay, I got to sit down at the dinner table and tell my
Yeah.
mom this isn't going the way she thought it would?
Yeah. I'll be honest, probably much better than most people will, if they have that conversation one day, will go for them, because I just, or hopefully it's just as good. But I had such a great relationship, and still do to this day, with my mom, and she's always been my biggest supporter, and she's been someone in my camp since I can remember. So when I had that conversation, I don't think she was all that surprised. I think she always kind of knew how my brain worked, and how what got me motivated to do things. So we basically just had that conversation, and I just asked, I was like, hey, basically give me a gap year. Let me show you in a year,
What I can
this
do.
this proof of concept, and show anything progressing in the right direction. And if I don't, or if I halfway through myself realize that this isn't it, then I'll gladly go back to school, because that's not going anywhere.
So you're
But
basically saying your mom looked down at her watch and went, "About time. What's taking you so long?"
probably, honestly, she
I
was
knew
probably
it.
like,
What are you
yeah.
waiting for?
Exactly. And no, I'm very thankful, obviously, for the relationship that we have, and all the things that she's done for me, and being a great support system.
And that's actually what I was going to ask you next, and you've already answered it about the support system. So, who
Hmm.
else has been there through, maybe from the beginning, or who's popped in from time to time? Who's been Tyler's support system to be like, man, this is a great idea? We
Yeah.
all need that. Whether it was me starting this podcast where I was unsure, I didn't know if anybody even wanted to come on. And meanwhile, I've interviewed so many people and I have a list of others. But in the
Hmm.
very beginning, you're always so nervous. Are they going to like it? Do they want to listen? What's going on?
Yeah.
And who aside from mom, obviously, which yay mom, thank goodness for you, but
Yeah.
who else was there that maybe was that other person that you were like, oh yeah, if it wasn't for so and so constantly whatevering.
Yeah. I definitely would say my friend group. Someone in particular, the guy I told you earlier, who I was in his party for his wedding, Ryan Morangis, someone I went to school with in elementary. We played on travel teams together. He's been a huge support system. Another friend of mine, Daniel Salvador, who I actually met on my bus in sixth grade year for Don Estridge, and we stayed, really great friends ever since. He's been a huge support system. I could list all the ones that I still have, contact with today, and have great relationships with today, have always been very supportive. And they, maybe in the very beginning, they might have probably looked at me like, oh, you really want to pursue this? Like, and it's not even a knock on their friendship and belief, but it's just like at that time we
Right.
were so programmed to be, you go to school, you graduate, you get a job.
Yeah, you
But
bucked
it
the
didn't
system.
take.
You changed the norm. You did
Yeah.
something that nobody else was doing in your friend group, or even that you could
Yep.
go, oh, but so and so did this, and they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So, but I will, again, with that being said, it didn't take long for them to see that I was for real in what I wanted to do. And thankfully, the numbers started to come in, and like I said, I had a proof of concept, and I was able to show like this is a viable thing. And from that point on, they have been nothing but supportive. And now, thankfully, I do have someone in my corner, my fiance Alexa, who's a great rock, and someone who supports me each and every day too. So I've been very, very blessed in that.
That's
In that
awesome.
sense.
I see you guys on Insta, and it's like you guys look perfect together. And I'm so glad that you found her, because you both care so much about each other, and it's so great to see. And
Yeah.
you even had confidence in me to have me talk to her when she was trying to come down from New York with education, and we had a long conversation, and that was just so nice. And then when I saw you guys got engaged, I was like, all right, here we go. Now we're talking. This is awesome. And I was just so happy for you. That's incredible, because we all need a support system in our life, and we all need those people to say, hey, yeah, this is a good idea. Or even like you said, maybe your buddies are like, I'm going to challenge them on this. What are you talking about? Make me understand. And then they came along for the ride. But we all need that, because you can't take it as a negative. You have to take it as, these guys care about me. They want me to be successful. They don't want me to fall on my face. So yeah, maybe they're being difficult on me now, but they want me to have that now, not 5 years from now going, oh man, why didn't I listen to them? They were totally right. Rather than saying, oh, okay, thank you for these valid points. And here, let me show you. And you did. And that's tremendous. That's just so good.
Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer of not having just yes men in your camp. You need people who are gonna, push you and challenge you as well.
Step up. Yeah, of course. Not every. Well, what do you need a yes person for? They're a dime a dozen. They don't help you with anything. But someone who really is going to say, "Are you sure?" And it's not that they're being mean, and it's not that they're trying to, poop on your dream. But you need to make sure I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket, and then there's a hole in the basket, and now what? That's
exactly.
That's really good. So when you went to the private school, and maybe even to your brief college experience, was there something that Don Estridge taught you that you didn't know, but when you went to these other institutions, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I already learned that at Don Estridge?
So this is another thing that I think has gotten brought up multiple times, and unfortunately, so this my answer is actually going to be a kick in the butt to people who are listening to this. So they are more prepared than me. But we talk about ad nauseum about how we had a prime opportunity to take advantage of all the, intro to technology, coding, all the different offerings that was at that time very unique to Don Estridge. I'm sure it's now become a little bit more
mainstream.
Exactly, because of just where we are in 23 versus
it's why the
2006.
school started. It's the school started for that particular reason, and then other schools went, hey, that works, we'll do it too.
And that's why I'll always say, you guys were the pioneers of it. And so even with me not maybe taking it as serious because I was just a dumb 6th grade, 7th and 8th grader, even that very little, dipping my toes into what they offered, it definitely prepared me and allowed for me to have at least a framework of what I was getting into and how to navigate social and honestly, and maybe just understanding the landscape of things and where they might be going. It just maybe not something like directly like words on paper, but it just taught me like this is how fast things are progressing and this is where things might be going. And maybe that played into the foresight of like, okay, 2013, this is the time to strike and get going.
Right. It gave you a foundation and you had a better understanding. I was the same way with the podcast. Like I had the idea and I'm going, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never done this before. I didn't know I needed different technologies. I didn't know I need a condenser mic. I didn't know I need a soundboard. I didn't know any of this stuff. But I did know from a program that I took when actually you were at Don Estridge, it was called Project Smart. And it taught us how to use all these Apple editing programs. And then I realized, wait, I know how to do this. So all I have to do is figure out this talking thing. And I'm like, wait, I talk for a living. That's not too hard.
Yeah.
And then I was able to put it all together. And like you said, the A-Team, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie or the actual TV show. I love it when a plan comes together, and it's just, you don't realize what life has prepared you for until you actually try to do whatever that is that you're doing. And you're like, wait, I already know this. I already did this. That is tremendous. So I always ask my guests, is there a quote or maybe more than one that you have maybe lived your life by or you follow or something that picks you up when you're down? Or is there a quote that just does it for you?
So there was one that I had discussed with you earlier, and then one actually while recording this with you that came to mind that I think both resonate with me.
Throw them out. The more the merrier. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I love quotes. They're awesome.
The first one is, and again, I don't know who said it, and I might even be butchering it and putting my own spin on it, but the concept is just success is when hard work meets opportunity. And it's just like, to me, that's just like it's simple addition. You know, you have the hard work, you put in the hours, you put in the time, and then when that opportunity comes, you're ready. Like in basketball, this isn't a quote, but they always say like you stay prepared so you don't have to get prepared.
Exactly.
So if you're a walk-on, if you're, you know, seventh, eighth man off the bench, if you're messing around and not staying on top of what you need to do, when that guy who's, you know, right ahead of you in that depth chart goes down with a tweaked ankle or has, you know, can't think straight because it's finals and he does not in the right headspace, and you need to go out there and perform, you need to be ready before, you know, before that time comes. And if you're going to get ready when that time comes, you're not prepared and you're not going to succeed and you're not going to do what you need to do for that team.
Because that might be the only time you ever get that chance. And some people take it and never give it back, and some people never get it again.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're not prepared for it, that might be your one opportunity, and then it's gone. So and I likened it to basketball, but same thing with business. You know,
right?
Being on your P's and Q's and doing all the little things and being consistent, because then when that phone call comes and that email comes and it's an opportunity you've been waiting for, or dreaming of, you can't be frazzled. You got to be ready to go.
Right. Do you have that business proposal ready to go to ship it out to them so you can be like, here you go? Or you're like, fumbling around to get it written.
Exactly. Right. And then the second one would be
what was that second one?
Fail forward, you know.
Yes.
Just because, like you said, anybody who has any ounce of success has not been batting 1,000. They're not perfect.
Nope. We've all made mistakes. We've all failed. We've all been rejected. You name it, it's happened. But the real winners, they keep going. They push through it. Like the Oscars aren't they today? Aren't the Oscars today, I think?
I think they are, yeah.
And I heard someone talk about how they were rejected beyond the amount of time that most people would even think to keep moving forward. And they were like, I'm going to still do it. And it's like, when is no enough? Like how many times 100, 200, 300, like I couldn't fathom going on that many callbacks and not getting anything. And they're like, nope, these are just not for me, or these directors or whatever don't see me as I should be. And like you said, they got that chance off the bench. That person went down and they got their opportunity and they grabbed those reins. And something like 25 years later, they're still acting. So you never know, you know, and for some people, it could take a lifetime before they get to what it is that they want. So keep hope alive, keep the dream alive. It could happen at any time. Maybe it wasn't meant for you to happen at 25, but maybe it was meant for you to happen at 55. Who knows? But you know, everyone's different, but a lot of people, I think, they just give up on the dream because real life happens. I have to get a job. I have to pay bills. I get married. I have a family. I have responsibilities. And before you know it, like 25, 30 years is gone. And you're like, oh my gosh. But it doesn't mean that you can't start something new.
No.
And I love those ideas. And the fact that you're able to convey this to these kids is tremendous, because they're going to learn so much from you. Because you basically built a business from, can't we say nothing? Like there wasn't, you didn't buy it from someone, you made it. It was your idea. You brought it to fruition and you birthed this idea and you have grown it into this teenager that it is today, and it's moving forward. And like I said, maybe someday, you know, somebody comes along and says, hey, we really like your concept, but we understand you're maybe financially not in the position to do the things you'd like to do, but we'd like to buy your company, you know, like a startup, basically. Because I could totally see somebody doing that, and that would be tremendous. And now you have the wherewithal to do what you want because the finances are there. That would be like the ultimate goal, I assume. I mean, that's my
that it really is, because, you know, being a lean startup myself and just being a very lean production of, you know, being a one-man band, essentially, like it's very, it's a blessing because I don't have much overhead and a lot of operating costs, and I don't have mouths to feed, and there's not a lot of stress other than putting food in my own mouth. But like, thankfully, I'm able to do that. But
Right.
that, the end goal is to not just be a one person show. It
No.
is to go ahead and build out and provide opportunities for other people. And like we were saying, to find that opportunity to stay around a game that you love. Maybe it is you going and starting your own business, or maybe it's being a part of something that's already happening and
Right.
could potentially be special with adding your ingredient to it. So
Right.
that's
Or some
definitely
company
a goal
comes
of
along
mine.
and says, hey, we want to hire you to do this for us, but we're
Yep.
a huge company. And again, without the experience of what you're making for yourself, you don't know where this is going to go until you do it. And you're currently doing it. You don't know who's watching, who's trying to see, where does this go? How does this turn? Maybe this is the guy for us in 3 or 4 years. Let's see what he does. So you're working towards a goal, but you don't know what's behind the scenes that's actually happening. And that's incredible because it's coming along. You're doing a great job, and you've literally built something from nothing, which how many people in this world can say? And that it needs to be, I'm sorry, but here you go. You need to be applauded for that because you know what, man? It takes a lot to put yourself out there financially, socially, emotionally. I mean, come on, it's an emotional roller coaster because it's ups, it's downs, it's business, it's life, it's your livelihood. And that takes a lot. And like you said, your homeboys were like, I don't know about this idea. And now they're like, this is the greatest thing ever, and you proved them wrong. And that shows me that you will and are a success because you've proven the doubters, the naysayers, even some of your friends, you've proven them wrong and you didn't give up. And that is what it's all about. And the fact that you did it, it's just tremendous. So
well, I appreciate that.
Oh, no worries, man. We all need the pat on the back from time to time, and you deserve it. So as I end all these podcasts, I love to ask the question, since you went to Don Estridge and you took all these computer classes, do you remember who Don Estridge, the person, actually was?
So I would be lying if I said that I do. I'll be very honest. I do know, and I don't know if that has any tie to it, but that the building that Don Estridge is in is a former IBM building. So my guess is maybe he's tied to the company of IBM.
Well, all right. Good job. So most people have a problem with it. They're like, I know it was an IBM facility, and you're 100% right. It was the IBM facility where Don Estridge himself worked, and he gets credit for inventing the personal computer. So he invented it there in that building.
Awesome. Well, he is one of the major reasons why I'm able to do what I do. So thank you, Don Estridge.
Exactly. And I don't know if you remember, but we have his personal computer in the front office. Do you remember that?
No, I actually was never aware of that. That's awesome.
Yeah. His family, unfortunately, Don Estridge died. He was going to a conference, and him and his wife died in a plane crash. They were going to a conference to speak. And when Don Estridge, the school, came around, his family wanted to say, hey, we have his personal computer, not his first computer, but his own personal computer. And they donated it to the school. And whenever you go to the front office, it's in this glass case, which I think is pretty cool. But
that's awesome.
The fact that you knew that it was still the IBM building and you're so far removed from this is pretty incredible. And that is a good thing to know, because without him, like you said, myself, I wouldn't have gone to work there if it wasn't such a technology school, because I love technology. To me, I always want to be on the cutting edge and learn how to do all this stuff. And the same thing, you went there, you had to take these classes, and this is totally helping you for your career today, because you're in the digital arts, you're producing all of these things, which is tremendous.
Yep.
Well, Tyler, on behalf of the How I Got Here podcast, I really wanted to thank you for coming on and telling your story. And I know it's going to be very influential for a lot of people who are on the cusp of possibly starting their own business, putting themselves out there, giving something a chance. And I just appreciate you telling your story. And thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. And hopefully, hopefully what they hear is something that could just motivate them and continue to push forward, even though they're young. They got their whole lives ahead of them. But remember to breathe, take it in and just keep pushing forward and fail forward. But I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind-the-scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.